Uh, Thank you. Make sure you sign up for Leland if you haven't already to stay in the loop on future events like we do. We do these all the time. We send out free resources, so we want to make sure you stay in the loop. And we're just really happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us on your Tuesday evening. We'll jump right in, and I'll be monitoring the chat. So feel free to ping me any questions if you have anything. Let's jump in. So tonight we're going to cover standardized tests, letters of recommendations. We're going to go deep on essays, which obviously many of you have questions on. We're also just going to talk about general application tips for BYU. Afterwards, we're going to send out a recording of this event, and then we'll also send you later this week some free resources like an application checklist, recommender prep docs, sample admit essays, and other helpful articles. So make sure you stay tuned. We'll send some discount codes and other resources as well, and links to the coaches' profiles that are on this call tonight that are amazing, and we're so grateful that they joined us tonight to share their knowledge. So we'll just do a quick introductions, an overview, and then we'll jump into the meat of tonight, which is all about the BYU application. My name's John Colliker. I'm the CEO of Leland. I'm also a BYU alum, and then got my MBA at Stanford, and now I'm here in Lehi, Utah, just down the road from BYU. You'll also see Erica and Josh in the chat, two other Leland team members and BYU alums. We're obviously big BYU supporters and big BYU fans, and are here to help. I'll be hosting tonight and asking our expert panelists, all the questions. And with that, I'd love them to introduce themselves. We're so lucky to have all three of them here tonight. And Christian, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Amanda and then Susie.
Hey, everybody. My name is Christian Hansen, and I'm a former member of the BYU admissions team. Later, I became the associate director of the MBA program at UC Irvine, and I also was an internship director for LG Electronics. I'm a full-time coach, and I help students like you apply to colleges around the country and around the world. And the big thing that I'm about is helping students really transform themselves, because higher applications come from higher writing, but higher writing comes from higher thinking. And I'm here to raise your game. Grateful to be here. Can't wait to help you future Cougs.
Amanda, we'll kick it over to you.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Wirtz. I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. I'm also a BYU alumna, and so happy to share my expertise, as I've worked with a lot of different clients on their BYU applications. I've also worked in admissions. I've been on the AdCom side at both the Keck Graduate Institute at the Claremont Colleges, as well as the University of Redlands. I have had a lot of different professional experiences as well. And so not only am I a college admissions coach, but I also do career coaching, and I'm looking forward to bringing my experience with my prior clients to tonight's discussion. So happy to answer any questions that you have as we go along as well in the chat, but just looking forward to getting to know you. Thanks.
Great. Susie, bring us home.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Susie Boyce. I am also a BYU graduate. I graduated in English and German, and I started out teaching, so I taught English and German. I'm also a published writer, and I've been featured in both local and national publications and over the years. And for the last 16 years, I've been helping students like you get into the colleges of their dreams. I've helped a lot of undergrad and graduate students in various programs, and I spent a significant amount of time on BYU and helping lots of students just like you become Cougars. So I'm happy to help and to talk tonight about everything I've learned over the years.
Awesome. Thank you. As you can see, we're really lucky to have all three of them tonight. Each of them come with different perspectives, different experiences. So thank you three for being here. We're now at almost 500 people on this call. Sorry if some of you had an old Zoom link. We're excited to have you here. It's growing by the second, so we're excited to jump in. We did lock down the chat because we have so many people. So you can message me. A couple of you have asked me questions. I'll try to ask the panelists all the questions that come through, but if we don't have time, feel free to reach out to any of them through their profiles that we've dropped in the chat for a free intro call. And then wanted to just plug that we have a scholarship contest going on right now for anyone that's going to be in college this next year or is currently in college. All you have to do is make a video about who's your hero and post that video, tag us, and you can get more details. We've dropped a link in the chat so you can get more details there. And then you can also scan this QR code. We will include links to this in our follow-up emails as well. All right, so just to do a quick Leland overview, a lot of you are probably wondering, what is Leland? It's not affiliated with BYU, although we just love helping people apply to BYU. Our mission is to help unlock human potential by making the world's expertise more accessible. The world's expertise are 3 coaches that we have on the panel tonight and many other coaches that we have on the platform. And we bring their expert insights to you through free events like this, and also through coaching. So many of them work one-on-one with clients. We helped hundreds of people apply to BYU last year. And other top colleges. They also do group classes and put out content and other things into the community. But we do a lot of events like this. And so, yeah, we're excited to have you on tonight and get to know you a little bit better and hopefully help you in this process. We know it's exciting and also nerve-wracking. There's a lot to do. We've helped thousands of people apply to top schools, and we also help people apply to jobs. So if you're doing interview prep or internship recruiting, medical school, law school, we do a bunch of those different categories. Some of our most popular are ACT tutoring, college admissions, MBA, consulting, or other forms of career coaching, finance careers. How can Leland help you specifically? Well, these coaches do essay reviews, interview prep, recommender selection, resume review, school company selection if you're trying to decide where you want to apply, scholarship planning, network building, all sorts of different things. One note that I wanted to make on this slide is that last year our coaches did help hundreds of BYU students with their applications. Many families like yourselves are either new to the incredibly competitive world of college applications or BYU admissions, or just don't necessarily have all the help they need to be successful, because these processes are getting more and more competitive every single year. When BYU released their applications a couple of weeks ago, they added some language that says you may not pay anyone to help you with your application, and you may not use generative AI tools like ChatGPT as you compose your responses. They also have language, though, that says you may ask others to read and review your essays. So before we hosted this event, we actually wanted to get clarity on what our coaches could still do to help you. So we met with the head of admissions last week to determine what is and isn't okay. So here's kind of how we can help. Number one, this event, it's free. So we're about to share a bunch of amazing resources and insight. 2, many of our coaches are offering free coaching for BYU applicants if they work with them on other applications. As mentioned, free help is in line with BYU guidelines. 3, you can take learnings from other applications to your BYU applications. Some of the common app essay questions and recommender selections overlap. So the learnings from non-BYU schools will still be really helpful. ACT, SAT tutoring is another one. We have tons of amazing ACT tutors. And then lastly, we hope you'll come back to us for many stages of your life and in your career, like applying to jobs, graduate schools, internships, et cetera. We actually work with hundreds of current BYU students as they apply to graduate schools or apply to different jobs. We know you probably have additional questions and are here to support you. So feel free to reach out to me, and feel free to reach out to our 3 coaches. They're happy to take intro calls to figure out what works best for you and your situation. And we definitely still want to help you in any way that we can. All right. And with that, we will move on to a BYU application overview. This is the meat. Actually, the meat's going to be the expert insights, but we have to do a quick overview of the application, just to level set on everything that you're going to have to do to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So BYU, obviously it's a competitive institution, getting more competitive every year. A couple of things to call out on this slide. One is priority deadline, November 1st. Make sure, if you do nothing else tonight, just apply at the priority deadline, November 1st. You can all reach that deadline. You have time. So pull everything together. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that entails, but that's really important. You can take a look at some of the GPA and ACT averages, which can feel intimidating. We'll talk a little bit about when to submit your ACT score. Right now, it is optional still. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the other tactics you can use in order to make yourself stand out if your GPA or ACT is below that average. Just to kind of give you an overview of the application, BYU is an intensive application. It's by design. They want people that want to go to BYU. So they have a robust application. On the left, you see there's 5 personal insight questions, which are essentially essays, and then 2 additional activities essays. So really there's 7 essays here, and then you kind of have to cover, you definitely have to cover different things that show the AdCom who you are and help them get to know you. and they have different word counts. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can tackle those essays. Our coaches are going to be the best experts to answer that. You also need to get recommendation letters. So you need a recommendation from a high school teacher. You need one from kind of a personal recommender. And then some of you will also need a seminary teacher to recommend you. And then in the bottom, or the bottom right, we talk a little bit about the ecclesiastical endorsement, which is sort of like a bishop's recommendation. And so there's a lot of people that are involved in this process. You definitely don't want to wait to get started. And then you'll submit your official transcripts as well, which of course, for those of you applying this year, will only include your junior year, but you will transmit all of them once you officially graduate. All right. Blazed through that because I wanted to get to the fun of this tonight. We have 45 minutes to go deep on our expert insights here. So just to kick things off, we'll go in reverse order this time. Susie, what's your best tip for applying to BYU? I know that's a loaded question. There's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, just pick one. You're on mute, by the way. You all three.
Okay, yeah, just one tip. Well, one tip is start early. I wish I could have a lot more tips, but start early.
You'll
start
have time.
right now. Yeah.
All right, Amanda, what's yours?
Well, Susie stole my top one, so we are all on the same page with that tip. First of all, absolutely. I would say my second tip is don't go generic, do your research. I think this is probably a very painful point for me right now as I'm working with clients. Because when they talk about why they want to go to a particular school, not just BYU, they tend to go really generic, right? And with BYU, it's super easy to go generic. I want to go there because I want to gain a testimony. I want to go there because people are like-minded. I want to go there because, we start the class as a prayer. Those are all amazing things and critically important components of a BYU education, but it's not what makes it unique for you. So really make sure that you dig in and do your research to find out what you're passionate about with BYU. What is it that makes BYU your number one choice? And that is across the board, any school. That type of research and that level of deep thinking about why you want to go to a particular school will help you stand out from the crowd.
Great.
Everything they've just said, you guys start early and go specific. And to add just, the next level on that, the question that I always ask my students when I coach them, especially for BYU, is this question, and that is, why are you hiring BYU? I mean, think about it. You're paying them money, right? They work for you. They offer a service that's helping you live life at a higher level. Now, a couple things happens. When you're able to articulate, this is why I'm hiring BYU, it makes you really stand out from everybody else who's just, speaking in very generic terms. But here's the thing. College admissions professionals,
did you eat dinner yet?
They want you to come in, but more importantly, they want to get you out of BYU. They don't want you just to come and float and waste time. And so when you're able to articulate, why are you hiring BYU? What is your post vision? Now, if you don't have one, that's okay. And that's what coaches like us help students figure out. But why are you hiring BYU? It makes you stand out compared to everybody else who's thinking about simply just coming and kind of figuring out. Because most people use college to figure out what they want in life, but college is really there to help you build the life that you want. That's how you can stand out.
That's great. All right, so we're going to drill in a little bit more to some of the details behind what these folks just shared. One thing to call out are the BYU aims. And it'd probably be best to hear from you. And so we have a question on that next. But it's spiritually strengthening, intellectually enlarging, character building, and leading to lifelong learning and service. And so there's a lot to unpack with applying to BYU, but BYU is a unique place and they want to see that you want to be in that environment. They have one of the highest yields of any university in the country, which means of the people that get accepted to BYU, they have some of the highest percentages of actually going to the school. And so they want to see that you've participated in extracurriculars, that you're a leader, that you care about being spiritually strengthened, that these aims that we've listed here at the top align with who you are and what matters to you. And so we're gonna jump in a little bit of into that. So maybe we'll kick it over to you, Amanda. How does someone look at these aims of a BYU education and incorporate that into their application to communicate that they actually do care about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the core things that I work on with my clients at the very beginning is really defining for themselves personally what each of those means to them, right? What if you were to define each of the aims of BYU, what would that look like? And what personal experiences have you had that have prepared you to engage with those aims as a student of BYU? So really drawing on personal experiences that have helped them to kind of shape how they view that particular aim is really helpful, because each of the essays is linked to at least one of those core aims of BYU. And so that is your opportunity to really express how you're going to implement those aims when you're a student there.
That's great. Christian, anything you'd add on that?
Something that it's really helpful to articulate is, what is your contribution going to be on campus, right? A lot of times, colleges aren't there to find a generic student, but a balanced student. They're trying to create a balanced class. And so what is your specialty, or the thing you're really going to dig in to add and contribute to once you get to campus? Because we're trying to build, again, a balanced class. So think in terms of, what are you going to do on campus? What is the value that you're going to make a difference on campus with?
That's great. Anything else, Susie?
What they both said, and having a very specific story to go along with your commitment to the aims, kind of like what Amanda said. And also, you can really help demonstrate your commitment to the aims through your recommenders. So I'm sure we'll talk about recommenders later, but a way that if they are aware of what the aims are and they've seen you demonstrating your commitment to the aims, then they're going to be more likely to make comments about you that show that you are committed to the aims.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely, to your point, it's nice that there are so many essays in some ways. The silver lining of having to spend the next couple of months writing is that you can actually you can use different essays to tackle different parts of the aims. So, you don't have to spend all 5 or 7 of your essays talking about being spiritually strengthened. They want you to be balanced in other ways, so you can talk about other things that you've done to dig in on certain skills or interests. And I think that's one way to do it is through those essays and through those recommenders. Okay, so let's go into recommenders, because this is a really common and difficult question. Maybe we'll go to you, Amanda. How should they think about picking the teacher and non-relative recommender? Let's start with that question first, and then we'll get into preparation.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are very specific people that they want you to select for your recommenders. It can't just be anyone, right? So the teacher has to be from your junior or senior year. It has to be in one of the core classes. So math, English, social sciences. So making sure that it's a teacher within those specific core subject areas. But also, one of the things that's really important is that to remember is that they're not going to know the clout of the teacher that you're selecting. AdComs do not go back and look at the LinkedIn profile of your recommenders. And I think a lot of students get hung up on, oh, but this teacher is the best and everybody knows this particular teacher. With my grad students, this happens all the time. They're like, well, this professor worked here. And I always come back to, but how well do they know you? How well are they going to be able to articulate their relationship with you and being able to see the type of work that you do? And back to Susie's point, be able to articulate your fit with the aims and the mission of BYU, right? And so being able to have this close relationship with the teacher is more important than how popular they are at your school, right? Or what kind of network connections they have. So keep that in mind instead of worrying about the prestige of the teacher or the non-teacher recommender that you're going to select. Think about that relationship that you have with them and specific examples that they can draw upon to help write your letters of recommendation.
Yeah. Christian, how would you recommend preparing these folks to do a good job?
Yeah, no, we need to rethink how we consider the letters of recommendation. when I coach my students, we talk about how the letters of recommendation amplify stuff that you've already mentioned elsewhere in your application. So as you're thinking about the best stories that you want to tell, if you are struggling to figure that out, again, that's what we coaches do. We help you really dig in and find your gold. But once you identify the key stories you're trying to tell, then think about, okay, what teachers or recommenders can amplify that narrative. Then when you speak with your recommenders and you ask them to write the letters, it's okay to kind of prep them a little bit and say, hey, I'm going to be mentioning these experiences in my application. That's totally okay. They want to help you, right? And sometimes they don't know where to start as well. So if you prep them a little bit and say, here are the things I'm going to be focusing on. I'm actually going to be referencing like these key experiences. Would you be willing to mention those and also, talk about it? Then those letters of recommendation are going to amplify the messages you have in your essays. So that's why that way a reader, when they're reviewing it, they're going to see a clear, connected set of examples that really bring home a single narrative of who you are and what you're trying to do. So it's okay to talk with your recommenders and help and prep them a little bit.
Yeah. Anything you'd add, Susie?
Well, one way to prep them is you can find on the BYU website, you can find the questions that recommenders will be asked. So part of the prep, besides reminding them of the experiences they've had with you, is to literally share with them what they're going to be asked. And that will help them also when they get that will just help them make a more cohesive recommendation for you.
Yeah, that's great. We have a recommender prep template that we'll send to you as a follow-up to this session that does show some of those questions that they will be asked. And you can actually put together a little one-page document that explains to them, hey, here are the questions you're going to be asked, and here are some ideas from our shared experiences that can help you do a good job. And you think like, the teachers that are being asked to write recommendations are often being asked to write recommendations for multiple people because they tend to be nicer or more approachable teachers. Now, when they sit down to look at the 20 applications they plan on, or 20 recommendations they plan on writing, which one are they going to start with? Probably the one that has a nice little recommender prep letter attached to it with a student that clearly cares and worked hard and didn't just come to them 2 days before and talk to them and brought them a cookie or whatever, a swig, whatever they like, and make sure that they feel supported and like you care, because it's really important that they feel like you've drafted them onto your team to get you into college.
You guys, dust off that recipe book and get that chocolate chip cookie from grandma ready to go, because a plate of cookies really expedites that letter of recommendation writing. So, yeah.
John,
Yeah.
can I also just say, I know we talked earlier about start now, but I could not emphasize enough start now on this, because teachers write the letters in the order in which they receive the requests. It's just the way it's done. And so if you haven't done anything else for your application tonight, you're going to take those questions, just like Susie said, this is something I do with my clients too, and write down your greatest hits list under each of those questions and submit it tomorrow. I mean, this is so critically important that you get to the top of their list, because like many of you, I'm sure that they get totally burnt out by number 165 letters So do it now.
Yeah, I think like a good rule of thumb is if you can give them 4 to 6 weeks, that almost guarantees they do a really good job. If you give them, a week, it gets harder. So make sure you get on that. And we'll send out that template so that you can use it. You don't have to use the exact thing, but you can adapt it in a way that makes sense for you. All right, let's talk about the essays, the personal insight questions. We're sending out this presentation, so you'll be able to look at it later. You can also see these online. But there's 5 questions, and some of them actually have overlap with Common App questions, like this first one. Describe a topic, idea, or experience that you find so engaging it makes you lose all track of time. What have you done to learn more or engage further in the topic, idea, or experiences? What resources did you use? The second one is about how you became aware of a significant need in your family, school, or community. The third one is sort of like a failure story, a goal that wasn't accomplished, an aspiration not achieved, and what did you do about it? Obviously, what you did about it is much more important than the failure itself. The fourth is about the kind of the ecosystem of students that BYU is wanting to admit. And I think this goes to, you don't want to be generic. You want to have depth about you. And of course, many of you are sitting there on this call thinking, I'm just like an average high school kid. I don't really know how I'm different. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can make yourself different through the stories that you tell, even if you don't necessarily feel like you have all of these things on paper. And then the fifth one is about your faith. BYU wants to be spiritually strengthening. They want people that care about that. And I think it's really important that you explain to them clearly why you want to be in that environment. So those are the 5 questions. Again, you can access these on the site, but we wanted to kind of lay those out for you. So let's go back to you, Susie. What are some of these things that people should absolutely include in their essays? How do they think about kind of the positioning of different stories and not just telling the same story? Curious if you have any thoughts on how to approach that.
Well, first of all, you want to, before you write any essay, you want to just dig down. And I think probably all of us coaches have different ways to help you do this, and find your most powerful, most significant stories in your life. And each essay needs to have one of those stories in it. Essays that have more than one life story tend to be too broad, too surface level, and don't go very deep. So a really good, powerful story that connects with the prompt, and that also connects with one of the aims of the BYU education. So you're showing that through your story that you are representing your importance for that aim, and that you're also you also talk about how that story is going to help you contribute on the BYU campus as a student who is there for a reason and can do really good things. So those are my top tips.
That's great. Christian, I'll kick it over to you for this one.
Yeah. You guys, something that I work through with my students, I say I have 2 sentences. Okay. The first one is, when it comes to trying to decide what you want to do with your life, don't pursue your passions. Now, after they pick up their jaw from the ground and they've stopped screaming at the phone, in anger with me, I try and then update it with, instead of pursuing your passions, I want you to pursue problems that you're passionate about solving. So try and figure out, what are some problems in the world that you are interested in solving? And when you're able to communicate that to BYU in your essays about how it ties into a larger vision, right? How do these stories, and again, Susie nailed it, you guys. It needs to be stories, not just a big compilation of facts, figures, and achievements, but think about stories that connect to a larger vision that you have. Here's the thing. When you walk in the door and you're able to articulate, this is the vision that I have, then you have a purpose. And neurologically, when we encounter people with a purpose, we are more likely to like them, trust them, and see leadership potential in them, right? Plus, only 1 in 5 students have a sense of what their purpose is when they go to college. So if you're able to identify a problem you're passionate about solving in the world, then you stand out from 80% of people. You're going to be more likely to be liked, trusted, and seen leadership potential in, and you're going to have essays that ultimately will stand out from everybody else. So what problems do you see? How does BYU help you solve them more effectively? If you can articulate that. And again, coaches, this is what we help students do all the time. We have proven processes to help you do that. And that's one way that you can easily stand out.
That's great. Amanda, this is such an important question. Love your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've talked about a lot of different components that I would also echo, but I think showing impact is really important. So one of the ways that you can show leadership is really critically important for BYU. They've talked about this for years, right? We want to admit leaders. We want to admit people who have been leaders and future leaders. And I think one of the ways that you show that is impact. How have you had an impact? And it doesn't have to be this big global impact. It could literally be something as simple as an impact that you've had on your family, right? I've had clients who have said, I took a job so that I could help my sister fund her mission. Wow, what an amazing impact that you've had on your family. And a great example of how you're willing to step up and take initiative on something to have an impact. I think the other thing to keep in mind when you feel like I am an average Joe student with nothing interesting that has happened in my life, it's you have things that are important to you in terms of values. You have things that have developed within you in terms of your perspective that you have on life. And I think those are the ways that they create a very diverse class too, is not just where you're from or what kinds of experiences you've had, but your perspective on things and maybe how they've shifted over time can be really helpful, but also just impact, right? Really, really thinking through what type of impact have I had on my family, locally, on a broader community. Think through some of those things, and that will really help you to stand out in your essays.
Yeah, that's great. I think a couple of things I would add, especially for the people that are feeling maybe a little bit intimidated by them not feeling special or different enough. So I think one thing that's really important is if it's important to you, if an experience or a trial or a challenge or whatever is important to you, you can figure out how to make it important to them. An example of this is when I was growing up, I was smaller than my peers. I loved playing sports. And every time I'd start a new season, I'd have to spend the season explaining or proving to the coach that I could compete, even though I was smaller. That's, not that big of a deal on the surface, but to me as a kid, it was a really big deal. And it was something that I thought about all the time. Eventually I grew, it wasn't a big deal, but I learned two important lessons. One, that I should focus on what I could control, not on what others thought about me. And two, that I should never forget what it feels like to feel small. And I should look out for others that might be feeling that way, not physically, but in other ways. So that is a seemingly simple story, but to me it was important, and I could figure out how to make it important to them through the way that I told that story, and also through what I learned from that story. So the differentiation can not only be the experience itself, but also the takeaways from it. Okay, so good timing, because this question, we did already talk about this a little bit. Maybe before we skip it, I'd love is there anything else that you'd recommend for people as they think about a more generic or overrepresented candidacy as they apply to BYU? I'll open it up. Yeah, go for it, Christian. And then
something to think about. There's a couple when you're trying to decide on stories, and this dovetails on what Amanda said in terms of trying to find places where you've had impact. I mentioned this a lot. There's 4 ways that you can show that you've participated in stuff, right? You can either be a participant in an activity, you can be a contributor in an activity, you can be a leader in an activity, or the top and the most rare thing that you can be is an initiator, right? The top 5% of students characterize themselves as initiators. So when have you been in a situation where, small or big, you took initiative, right? You saw something, you decided, I wanted to see if I can make a difference in some way, and so you simply took initiative. Again, people are worried, I haven't done some huge thing like, cured AIDS in a bathtub or solved nuclear fusion in my garage. And if you've done those, then be sure to mention them. But if you haven't, look for opportunities where you have simply taken initiative and tell those stories, because that starts to show BYU and other universities you apply to that you have the characteristics that they're going to want on their campus. So how have you taken initiative? Choose those stories.
That's great. Susie, we'll go to you.
So I'll also add that stories that show a before and an after for you, everything that we've said kind of covers this, but remember that a lot of things that happen in your life, even if it's one moment in time, even if it's one conversation you had, one moment in time, and that changed something for you. If a story that you choose can show a before and an after, and it shows your growth, and then you can connect that to your willingness and wanting to grow more, those are really powerful stories, and they can literally be a moment, and they can make excellent essays if they can show that before and after and that growth.
That's great. Amanda, anything else?
Yeah, I'll just add really quickly. I think what you described, John, with your own personal example is what I try to get my clients to do in terms of the so what, right? So no matter what the story is, the experience that you've had, make sure that you're bringing in the so what. And that really helps you to stand out and not be generic. So the so what for John was, I look out for the little people, right? I look out for the people who feel small. And that's the so what, right? It doesn't matter what the story is that you tell, if you don't wrap it all up for the reader in terms of what you're actually taking away from that experience. And I think every essay should have that so what should I take away from this particular experience, and how am I going to use that in the future?
Yeah, that's great. It's the who are you and why it should matter to them. Because it's not just who you are, it's what, why is you showing up on their campus going to make a difference in the lives of other students and in just the ecosystem overall. That's wonderful. Thank you. All right, let's get into some of the tactical questions. I'm getting a lot of pings around, GPA, ACT, especially. We'll get there. So how can someone that has a lower GPA make up for it in other areas of the application? I'll open it up. Anyone feel strongly about this one?
Yeah, I'll start in on this one. I want to make sure everybody understands you are not your GPA. This is probably one of the most stressful things when you feel like your GPA does not match your abilities, or that you have a slightly lower GPA than the median. John did a great job of displaying it up front, what the median GPA is in terms of the last incoming class for BYU. There's so many different ways that you can show that you are not your GPA. One of those is test scores. So if you are able to knock it out of the park with your ACT or SAT scores, that is one way to be able to show this is not my only way of just demonstrating my academic abilities, right? That's number one. Number two is write killer essays. If you can show that you are a strong writer, it doesn't matter what the topic is. If you can show strength in your writing and depth in terms of the way that you think through things and doing all the things we just described, right? Having that so what, bringing in your personal experiences and how you have a unique perspective on something, I think that can really overcome a lower GPA. It cracks me up when people come to me and they're like, my child had a 4.0, they had all these great activities, and they didn't get into BYU. And my first question is always, what did their essays look like? Because I cannot emphasize enough how critically important those are. So if you have a high GPA, don't write it in, right? Don't put them on the shelf and just kind of ease your way through the application. But if you have a lower GPA, this is a great opportunity for you to show the depth of your academic abilities and how wonderful your writing skills are that match their specific writing level needs.
Yeah, maybe I'll open it up to anyone else. That's a great answer. We did have a question come in that's like, what about during the COVID years? Something might have happened. Will the admissions team care about that? How should I think about that in my application? Anything you'd add to that, Christian or Susie?
Go ahead, Susie. Oh.
Write about it in your essays. Your essays have so much weight. They are weighted very heavily. And so, like everyone else is saying, those types of things, the essays are the perfect time to talk about them and to show the admissions committee who you are from all angles and not just from the angles of the stats that they're seeing. The essays have a ton of weight to them. So that's where to spend more time to stand out, and they'll know who you are better and deeper.
You guys, when it comes to phrasing and focusing on BYU, doing your research, we've talked about doing your research, really comes in handy. So digging into why a specific major. Are there professors that you're really interested in? Do they have any research centers? Are there specific classes that you've looked up and that you're really interested in taking, right? So the more you can dig in and show you've really invested in researching and understanding BYU, oftentimes that interest and that commitment can compensate sometimes for a lower GPA, because they can tell that you're really invested in being there, right? So think about that. If you don't have a major, that's okay. Still dig into what are some classes that you're going to have to take through your general education requirements. Showing that you've researched specific classes, it shows your interest level more so than someone else, maybe with a better grade, but with a more generic interest. That's one easy, low-hanging fruit that you can use to stand out.
Right. Thank you. All right. This question, should I submit my ACT or SAT score if it is lower than the average? Yeah, let's open it up. Amanda, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm a thumbs down on that. I think anytime you have a test optional and your scores fall below the median range, I wouldn't submit, because it isn't going to help you if it doesn't, especially if it doesn't match the range of your GPA score. So there's kind of this level in terms of what the expected ACT or SAT score should be if you have a certain GPA range, right? And if those two don't align, if they don't correlate, then it is kind of jarring for the admissions committee, right? And so I think I would not submit. Final answer.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Yep, same.
Yep.
This is the time. This window's open. So of the test optional. So, you know, use it to your advantage.
And it doesn't mean that it's not important. So do your best, especially for those of you who are sophomores, juniors listening on this call. I know there's lots of freshmen even. Do your best, because if you do get above average, that can be a differentiator. It can help, you know, elevate their stats. It can help open up scholarship opportunities. So don't just mail it in, but definitely don't submit it. And we saw this play out last year with a number of the clients that we worked with at Leland. Those that had excellent essays and did not submit their ACT score largely still were successful in the admissions process.
Yeah, to you students who are earlier in the process, bang for buck, things you can do to truly make a difference in your application is raising your ACT or SAT score and keeping your GPA high. That is just paramount in increasing your chances for success down the line.
Yeah, we've had a lot of questions about averages. The averages for ACT and ACT, we'll talk specifically, tend to be 28, 29. The range they kind of provide is like 27 to 30, 31. So that number is, I mean, I would say if you're at 28 or above, I think it's probably worth submitting. If you're at the 26, 27, you're kind of in that up to you, you know, you decide. And if you're below 26, would you guys agree with that, coaches? That's kind of general advice.
Yeah, if it's a 26 or a 27, the deciding factor is your GPA. So if your GPA is high and you have a 26 or a 27, that's a harder decision than if you have a lower GPA and your test score is 26 or 27. That's my thought.
That's great. Okay. So Christian, you mentioned this a little bit. Maybe let's I'll go back to you because I know you have thoughts on it. How to think about declaring a major versus just kind of being open. What would you say?
I think it serves you. You know, like I said, most people use college to figure out what they want in life, but you're going to stand out when you're showing how you're going to use college to build the life that you want. Now, there's going to be some cases where you're applying to a really competitive major where you have to have an additional application, like the School of Music. In this case, it is really important that you declare your major and you go through that additional audition process. Because what happens is that the admissions committee defers to those specialist colleges. They say, okay, give us the list of people you've accepted, right? And then the general admissions committee just gives those spaces out, right? So if you're accepted into the music program, the music school is going to go to bat for you. Same thing with sports, right? And other specialty interest programs like ROTC. Okay, that's another kind of hidden thing. But in terms of just generalized majors, one kind of caveat, if you're really interested in the nursing program on BYU campus is the most competitive academic program. And so if you have a lower GPA and you're stating things like, I'm interested in the nursing program, then they will take a look at your GPA a little bit more, right? Most majors, it's not the case, but I just know in the case of the nursing program, that is the case. So if you're generally, though, like, I have no idea what major I want to decide on, that's okay too. Then dig into what's the impact you want to have on campus. But I do find that students are generally served. They write better essays because they have more direction when they declare a major beforehand.
That's great. All right, we're going to keep moving. And we do have a few questions rolling in the chat. So if we have extra time, I'll go through some of these. But let's just kind of wrap it up with any final tips as you're kind of thinking through and things that you do with clients or you've done with clients in the past when they're applying to BYU, any recommendations? Maybe we'll go to you, Susie.
Well, like I said at the very beginning, start early. I would definitely have people on your team, essay coaches like us, parents, mentors. This can be a very overwhelming, especially BYU, it's a very overwhelming process. You look at all these essays that you need to write and everything else, and it just feels like, I don't know if I can do this. So the earlier you start, the better. the more rounds of essays that you write, the better. Basically, you'll just have a stronger application the earlier you start. And please ask for help, because so many people who love you have a lot of insights into your life that you maybe not even think about, or they just don't come to mind when you're thinking about those really important stories. And that you can just have a stronger application if you get a team with you.
That's great. Amanda?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I tell my clients up front, I said, anticipate 4 to 5 rounds of your essays. Don't think you're going to do it in one sitting. And the BYU application definitely is a lot of work, but it's worth it. Don't shy away from an application, BYU or other schools, because of the essays, right? Really think about why you're motivated to go to that particular school. And that will really help you to drive not only the things that you put into your essays, but the commitment that you have in applying yourself to the essays. Think of it as a part-time job, quite honestly. Really dedicate the time that you would to a part-time job to your applications. And I agree, if you don't use a coach, use friends, use family members. They can be really great litmus tests in terms of the uniqueness of your essays. If you write something in your essay and somebody reads it who's close to you and they say, I never knew that about you, right? That's a really good sign that you've hit on the uniqueness factor, or that you've been able to go a level deeper than just the superficial surface level essays that we're warning you against, right? I would also say, as my last tip and advice, don't just apply to BYU. BYU is an amazing school, but don't put all your eggs in the BYU basket, because there's so many amazing opportunities and so many incredible schools that would do for you the same thing that you would get from a BYU education, but maybe even a little bit better, because it might be a better fit for you. So really think about fit and culture and the things that are most important to you. Go outside of the BYU schools too, because they could use you. They need your talent. They need what you can bring to them as well. And if you don't get into BYU, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that your testimony is weak. It has nothing to do with that. I like to tell my clients too that college admissions is much like a dartboard. You do your best, you put your best foot forward, and at the end of the day, you don't have control over it, right? It really is hitting on the exact thing that admissions committee is looking for that freshman class for the next year. And so that's why it's so important to apply to many colleges, because you never know what they're looking for. So I would just diversify, just like a good financial portfolio. I would do the same with your college admission strategy as well.
You guys, I just want to second everything that my two colleagues here have said. On that point that Amanda just made, you guys, when I work with my clients, I help them treat colleges like the hammer wall at Home Depot. It doesn't matter which one you get. It's more important, do you know why you're getting it? Because your success in life is not determined by where you go to college, but why you're going to college. So yeah, where you go, you can, BYU is a fantastic option, but be sure to apply to other places, because again, where you go has less impact on your success than why you're going. Second thing here, you guys, is the importance of working with a coach. I remember, playing soccer when I was a kid. My coach in soccer didn't necessarily make me a better player, but they sat alongside me and they helped me look at the game of soccer differently. They helped me look at the field differently, and they helped build me as a person. And by doing that process, I became a better soccer player. Same when I took piano, right? My piano teacher didn't make me a better pianist, but she sat alongside me, helped me look at it different, and I grew as a person. When we work with students, we're not here to, help you write snazzy or catchy essays. We're here to build you as a person. We're here to help you look at yourself and the process of writing and this experience and building you into a better person than you currently are. And by doing that process, that's how you're going to stand out to colleges. Just so happens that for us, the college essays are like the soccer field for my soccer coach, or the keyboard of my pianist. It's merely the space where we work with you and we sit alongside you to help you become a better person. That's what coaching is all about. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to work with some of you.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. I'm getting a ton of questions, which I love. Thank you. I will try to, we'll try to rip through a few of them right now, but I just put the coach profiles in the chat for anyone to reach out to any of these coaches directly if you have additional questions or you'd like to talk about potentially working together. So we do have a couple questions on what should I avoid in my essays? We've talked a lot about what to include, but are there things that are kind of like, just stay away from that? Anyone feel strongly about that question?
I'll just say quickly, I think one of the big things to avoid, especially with BYU, is political perspectives. I think you don't know who's going to be reading your essay, so you want to make sure that in terms of like hot button topics of the day or politics, just keep those out entirely. The other thing is random quotes that people love to start their essays with that end up not having anything to do with what they then share in the rest of their essays. Just avoid quotes altogether, unless it's a dialogue that you're having with somebody else and you're sharing a narrative story. That's the exception to the rule. But quotes from experts or whatnot, while in a lot of your classes, they tell you these are good ways to start or finish an essay, don't use them in your college admissions essays.
And one of the reasons, besides everything that Amanda says, is you don't have room. If you spend time writing a quote, you have so few characters, every character counts, and you want to really make it count. And a quote doesn't do that. And one more thing that John mentioned earlier on when he was talking about the aims, BYU does want to see you talking about all of the aims. So spirituality is very important. It should be very strongly in one or two of your essays, but not all of them. They want to know everything about you, not just your testimony.
A couple things here. Yeah, again, everything that they've said, I 100% agree. One key thing is that if an event that you're going to write about occurred before 7th or 8th grade and it occurred and ended, then don't really mention that, right? Focus on stories that are more recent, like that happened in high school. Now, let's say you have something that began before 7th and 8th grade and it has continued until today. Feel free to include that, right? That's a perfectly fine essay topic. But one time when I was reading essays for BYU, literally a student wrote, "My greatest achievement is the fact that I had perfect attendance in kindergarten." Okay. In case you're wondering, that's not a good essay. So if it's happened before 7th and 8th grade, leave it. But if it's continued to today, then great. Second, a lot of people are doing things like the HXB trips, or maybe you're doing some sort of international humanitarian service project, or you've traveled internationally. If you have done something like that, 95% of the time, the essays look like this. I went to this third world country, I had a life-changing experience, and I've come back with new appreciation for what the first world has offered. And then they end it right there. Powerful essays take that narrative, but then they show how they've continued in some sort of action or some other way that they've continued to make a difference once they've gotten home, right? So if you're going to write essays about some third world travel experience, dig in deep to what are things that you've done since returning back. Now, one final thing. It's very appropriate to talk about any mental health struggles that you've had. Now, one key thing, though, if you do choose to talk about any mental health challenges that you faced, is be sure to show how you're working through it, or that you've received tools, you've sought advice, and you've gotten the help so that you are now, at least progressing or stable, right? And that you're able to function. BYU is a pretty competitive and hard place to be sometimes. And the readers are acutely sensitive and aware of students who have mental health issues because they don't want to accept you to a university that you're going to fail at or not have a great experience at. So if you want to write about some mental health challenges, that's perfectly fine. But be sure to include how you've worked through it, or that you're in a better place or finding more stability today. Then that can be a really powerful essay.
Great. Thank you all. That brought out a lot of really interesting perspectives. So thank you. I'm glad I asked that. Can we just show some love to these people? Thank you for taking your time to be here, all three of you. This was super helpful. I learned a lot about BYU applications. Feel free to reach out to them with any additional questions. I'm sorry that I did not get to ask all of the questions that came through the chat. I wish we had 5 more hours. We got a lot, but definitely encourage you to reach out to these coaches. We also have a discount code for you to use on anything. So we'll again send this in an email and a follow-up email for you to access. But just big thank you to you, coaches, for taking time out every evening to share so many helpful insights with these families. We also have an upcoming college prep event on the SAT. We will include that as well in the chat and in the follow-up email. So encourage you to do that. And final plug on the scholarship. Want to make sure you get access to that if you're interested. Always helps to have an additional $5,000 to help pay for college. With that, thank you for joining us tonight. Sorry again for the delay, but was great to have, I think, 600 of you here tonight. There were several thousand that are going to be watching the recording. So thanks for being here. Feel free to schedule a strategy session with our team if you still have questions, or reach out to these 3 coaches. We're excited to support in any way that we can. And we'll be sending out free resources and guides. And good luck. We're rooting for you. This is an exciting time, and we're hoping for the best. So good luck out there. Thanks for joining us.